Good evening, and thank you for joining me on Black News Tonight. I'm Marc Lamont Hil. In our headlines, a North Carolina district attorney is calling the shooting of Andrew Brown Jr. tragic, but justified. Brown was fatally shot in Elizabeth City on April 21st while being served an arrest warrant. The DA says 2 undercover officers had previously bought cocaine and heroin from Brown, who was a known drug dealer. District Attorney Womble said deputies did not discharge their weapons until Brown, quote, ignored commands and, quote, drove directly at a deputy. BNC's Astrid Martinez reports.
New body camera footage released Tuesday of the day Andrew Brown Jr. was killed by sheriff deputies in Elizabeth City, North Carolina. District Attorney Andrew Womble said deputies clearly identified themselves to Brown, that Brown refused orders to stop and drove his car directly toward one of the officers.
Based upon my review of the facts of this case, I have determined that the shooting of Andrew Brown on April 21st, 2021 was justified to protect the safety and lives of the deputies on the scene.
I did not agree with what the district attorney described as to what was happening in the video at all.
An attorney for Brown's family says they don't agree with Womble's results and disapprove of him investigating his own officers.
It's very unlikely that he is a disinterested, impartial, independent person in investigating whether or not these officers violated the law when they executed those search warrants and ended up killing Andrew Brown Jr.
The body cam footage showed armed Pasquotank County Sheriff deputies arrived to arrest Brown as he sat inside his vehicle. The 42-year-old reverses his car into a corner. Deputies move on foot to surround him. Boxed in, Brown then accelerates forward in an attempt to flee, forcing a deputy to jump out of the way. Womble said Brown's actions caused officers to believe it was necessary to use deadly force.
The deputies who fired the fatal shots perceived an actual and apparent threat, evaluated the situation in seconds, decided, and acted. The deputies' actions appear reasonable under all the circumstances of the case. The deputies faced both actual danger and apparent danger as perceived by them on the scene.
Attorney Wayne Kendall said
the attorney is filing a petition to release the entire contents of the body camera video and the entire findings of the whole investigation. 7 deputies involved in the shooting were put on administrative leave. 4 have been reinstated. The U.S. Supreme Court has refused to make it easier for police to enter a home without a warrant for reasons of health or public safety. The ruling throws out a lower court decision to dismiss a lawsuit brought by a Rhode Island man after officers entered his home and confiscated his guns. Edward Coniglia filed a lawsuit after a 2015 argument with his wife left him in a hospital for a mental health evaluation. Officers also took his guns with a warrant. He'd accused the officers of violating his constitutional rights, which lower courts ruled against. President Biden's administration backed the police in this case. A Justice Department lawyer saying officers should not be required to have a warrant in situations where people could be seriously harmed. Delaware State University is canceling more than $700,000 in student loans for recent graduates that have been hit hard by the COVID-19 pandemic. That's debt for about 220 people. The average eligible student will qualify for about $3,276 in debt relief. Now, there are a few requirements. A student must be graduating this semester or already graduated last semester. The student has to have must not also have a hold on their account, preventing them from graduating. Also, DSU is able to pay for the expenses through the Federal American Rescue Plan. In a statement, the university's vice president says they hope helping to pay off the debt will go towards moving costs and prepare them for their new careers or graduate school. In honor of George Floyd, to mark the upcoming anniversary of his death, a Florida-based African-American artist is getting ready to unveil a social justice exhibit. It includes 100 sketches of the faces of people killed by gun violence in the country. BNC correspondent Stephanie Bertini brings an exclusive first look.
The finishing touches on an exhibit that showcases the death, pain, and injustice gunfire brings.
It's a significant time in my lifetime.
The artist behind the sketches, Chaya Riggins, will unveil her work to mark the anniversary of George Floyd's death.
The murder of George Floyd changed not only this country, but it changed people across the globe. people who hadn't participated in this dialogue were participating in this dialogue.
And through her work, this woman, who goes by the artist name Vanta Black, is demanding change too. This exhibit involves an online component, linking people with a cell phone scan of a barcode to how they can take action against the social injustice that is killing so many.
I'm raising a black boy, and I think that the work that I create has to be relevant.
And motherhood is just as important to her motivation as is the fact that she is a black woman.
You're raising a girl too.
I'm raising a little girl too, you know. Breonna Taylor, that could have been me.
Hashtags in the world of social media helped her take action in the Black Lives Matter movement. She took a list of names she had from this portrait project, which has been in the works for years, and created the Say Their Names mural, drawing people in through Instagram.
I think I had about 250 names of victims that I had compiled through my research, through the portraiture, and then people started to come by and give me names.
The names given by the community plus hers totaled more than 500 and propelled her to focus back on the portrait project.
So in February of 2016, King Carter lost his life to gun violence.
King Carter was killed in a drive-by shooting in Miami-Dade. An innocent child caught in the crossfire. He was 6 years old.
Every time I saw King, I saw my son.
And so this artist did what she could do. She sketched King Carter. She sketched Patrick Smith and Darnell Smith Jr., both her cousins killed by gunfire. She sketched 2-year-old Carnell Williams Thomas, who was killed 2 blocks from her Miami-Dade County home by bullets. She sketched Trayvon Martin and all the rest.
In other news, Israeli airstrikes continued in Gaza after a brief pause overnight. During that time, the UN sent a small fuel convoy into the besieged enclave where 52,000 people are now displaced. As Israeli missiles toppled yet another building in Gaza and dozens of rockets were fired from the Hamas-ruled territory that killed 2 Thai workers, Palestinians across Israel and the occupied territories went on strike, protesting Israeli policies, which they deemed to be a system of apartheid that denies them equal rights, a characterization that Israel rejects. Protests also continued throughout the day and met with IDF's bullets that killed at least 3 Palestinians in the occupied West Bank. According to the U.S. officials, the Biden administration is privately encouraging Israel to wind down the bombardment of Gaza that has so far killed at least 217 Palestinians. That includes 63 children. In Israel, 12 people, including a 5-year-old boy, have been killed in rocket attacks.